This episode has been brought to you by JustNForm.com. If you're tired of being censored, tired of having your data stolen and sold, go to JustNForm.com, a social media site where all voices are welcome.
It's beginning to look to me that the more opportunity that Tulsi Gabbard has had to prove herself, not only on issues of domestic policy, but on issues of foreign policy that directly affect the United States or countries close to the United States or countries that are being affected by the foreign policy of the United States, that she is winning me over more, especially because we just covered how Bernie Sanders, once again, like with Russiagate, like with Syria, he let us down with his tweet about Venezuela, condemning Nicolas Maduro based off of nothing really but hearsay and propaganda, akin to the hearsay and propaganda that we have seen really throughout history about any foreign leader that sits on oil deposits, that wants the West out of their oil supply and out of their economy, and wants to nationalize that oil supply to benefit its people. Once again, also weirdly enough, these leaders are also the ones that want to desegregate their countries. And I mentioned this in every video because I really want people to understand how important that aspect is and how it is really reflective of our leadership, that coincidentally, all of the leaders who want to do the most for their people also want to desegregate their countries and want to see the uplifting of the minorities of their countries. But our leaders always try to demonize them or call those particular people dictators, because the ones who want equity for their people oftentimes want the United States out of their business. And equality and equity, just like it is suppressed in the United States, it's because it's bad for business. The United States goes out of its way to suppress that in other countries because it is, of course, still bad for business no matter where equity is. So Tulsi Gabbard has learned from history. She's learned from history. And her tweet that she had put out about 7 hours ago, not waiting to see the reactions from politicians, not waiting to see the reactions from the mainstream media, because we already knew how the mainstream media was going to react and how they were going to depict this issue anyway. She took a stand immediately. And her tweet, by the way, did get, she only has about 200 followers, 245,000 followers. Her tweets got more reaction than Bernie Sanders' tweets. Why? Well, I'll explain why in a second. The United States needs to stay out of Venezuela. Let the Venezuelan people determine their future. We don't want other countries to choose our leaders. We have to stop trying to choose theirs. I don't understand what is so hard to comprehend about that. That's why that tweet is straightforward. It is not divisive. It's simply saying, do as to others as you wish for others to do unto you. We can't complain about Russia meddling in our elections, trying to declare Donald Trump the Putin puppet president, and then we literally have the president who, ironically enough, is being wrongly accused of working for Russia. He's being wrongfully accused of working for Russia, being hypocritical in his resolve to try and declare the opposition leader as the interim president of Venezuela, despite the democratically elected president, Nicolas Maduro, being victorious again. Why? Because he has support of the poor people. He has support of the lower middle class. He has support of the minorities. And under both he and Hugo Chavez, Venezuela has actually done better than what it would have done if we allow another right-wing dictator to take over. Now, I want to be very clear about something. It's important that Tulsi say we allow the Venezuelans to pick, because what happens when the United States picks a leader, for some reason, The country is deemed a socialist country, so we call the leader a communist. We attack that leader relentlessly. We create lies. Our CIA goes in with propaganda and tries to orchestrate a media coup, and then we send in soldiers to orchestrate an actual coup. Hillary Clinton spent millions of dollars from the State Department already in Venezuela. So I'll let you know how long we've been doing this, because she was in charge of the State Department, 3 years ago? She was trying to establish a coup for over a decade in Venezuela, and was adamant about making sure that coup was followed through, just like she did in Honduras. Tulsi knows her history. Tulsi has not always gotten it right in the past. Prior to her endorsing Bernie Sanders, she was vice chair of the DNC. She was. A lot of people don't know that, but she was. She gave up her vice chair position because she did not like the way that Bernie Sanders was being treated. Tulsi Gabbard said that in the past, 2014, that she was okay with torture in some cases. She hasn't doubled down on that, but she did say that in 2014. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard, you know what she said about LGBTQ community, which she's long since apologized for. But for me personally, the last 5 years of almost every political career that I've seen has been more indicative of how they will act going forward. Because there is this great awakening, but there were people who had an opportunity to join this awakening who did not, and now they're trying to pretend they're progressive, like Kamala Harris, like Beto O'Rourke, he got welcomed with open arms and stabbed everybody in the back. Kirsten Gillibrand, same thing. Andrew Gillum was welcomed by Bernie Sanders himself, stabbed Bernie and Tim Canova in the back. However, in these last 3 to 5 years, there's only been one person consistent the entire time. When she made her change, that evolution has been prevalent through every decision she's made in our government and in foreign policy since she's endorsed Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders got it wrong on the side as well. He did. He wrongfully accused her. He decided to go by the word of the neoliberal, neoconservative establishment, the military-industrial complex, even though Tulsi Gabbard visited Syria. And he, at one point, clearly, and they're still friends, but he considered Tulsi Gabbard a confidant. So why would you ignore what she is telling you about Assad? Why would you ignore about what she is telling you regarding the Syrian conflict and try to pander? Yes, I'm glad that Bernie says we don't want to end up in another Middle Eastern quagmire. He's not advocating for regime change there. Cool. But the things that you say about a leader resonates, especially when you are supposed to be considered the establishment outlier, but you are quoting direct propaganda from the establishment. So people tend to believe, well, if Bernie Sanders is saying it, it's true. But now we are starting to see the opposite effect. Now, Tulsi, who did not wait to see what the mainstream was saying, unlike Bernie Sanders, I must admit, because he did his tweet maybe an hour and a half ago, Tulsi Gabbard did her tweet about 7 to 8 hours ago, before the stories had fully developed, before mainstream was able to manipulate their narrative going forward. And she came out and said, stay the hell out of Venezuela, period. That's all you need to know. You can do all the research in the world, and you can like Nicolas Maduro. You cannot dislike Nicolas Maduro. You can like the opposition leader. You can dislike the opposition leader. But whenever you have Bernie Sanders essentially quoting the same lies, perpetual lies about Nicolas Maduro that conveniently fit the narrative of establishing a coup, you have Bernie Sanders quoting the same narrative as Trump, there's a problem. And if you ask me, in this particular round of the presidential 2020 Democratic primary elections, Tulsi won. Tulsi won. And of course, I don't want to say we're keeping score, but we are keeping score because we had to make a decision, right? So we got to be honest about these. We have to be honest about these things. And plus, I'm a journalist, so I'm always going to tell the truth. Tulsi also said, I spoke out about the threats of military intervention in Venezuela in August of 2017. And guess what? She's not the only one. But she said, when Trump threatens more regime change wars, the latest in Venezuela, it hardens North Korea's determination to hold on to nuclear weapons. I personally spoke about regime change in Venezuela multiple times. I did once last year whenever I told you that a source in Trinidad, close to the military, said that they were training in Trinidad to deploy to Venezuela. Also covered whenever I said I know exactly why Venezuela was put on the Muslim ban list, because it looked totally out of place. But we put Venezuela on the Muslim ban list. People don't know that. Trump did when they left the petrodollar. But we only banned their diplomats because we never intended to negotiate, because we had always planned a coup. And I talked about that actually around the same time, around June, July. I talked about that because I said, what is one thing that Venezuela, Chad, and Africa, because Chad got added to the Muslim ban list too, and they listed terrorism as the reason. These countries were trying to keep the United States out of their oil. We took Sudan off the Muslim ban list because if we are going to launch into Chad, we would do it from Sudan. Just like when we launched into Sudan, we had our opposition leader, our right-wing authoritarian in Chad, and we launched out of Chad to go into Sudan. So we have been talking about this for a while, but Tulsi Gabbard specifically has been on the same page as progressives and those who are anti-regime change for quite some time now. And it is important to recognize that going forward. She took a bold stance. She refused to echo mainstream narratives regarding this issue, and she shows clearly she has understood that this intervention has been in the works. They want to make you believe that they were going to allow a democratic election to take place, but they were never going to allow a democratic election of Nicolas Maduro to take place. They had always planned a coup in Venezuela, and Tulsi had the foresight to see that. So that's a win in the column for Tulsi Gabbard. And to be totally 100% honest with you, I'm a little irritated at Bernie because he keeps bringing up democratically elected officials and election rigging, and you care about election rigging in other countries, but you don't say anything about election rigging in this country whenever your volunteers got the short end of the stick. The people who donate to you got the short end of the stick. That hurts. It hurts, and people remember. We do. Tulsi has addressed election rigging in this country. She's addressed election justice, and she's not scared to talk about it. She's not scared to stand up to the establishment. And that is something that Bernie Sanders is going to have to address if he wants to win back over his independent progressive electorate going forward. So thank you, Tulsi, for getting this right. Sometimes we have to tell truths we don't like to hear. But the truth is still the truth nonetheless. This isn't me attacking Bernie Sanders, but this is the truth. So leave a comment below, like and share the video, and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. You can donate to our Patreon and keep helping the network grow by clicking on the link in the description below. And also, make sure you join us at JustNForm.com. And finally, make sure you subscribe to us on Roku and be part of the very first independent news network on Roku TV. But more than anything else, always remember, find your balance. Peace.